Lindsay Cardin is a person in long-term recovery from substance abuse who has been able to thoroughly turn her life around. After finding a program and entirely submersing herself in it, she has created a brand new life, which includes helping people who also struggle with substance use disorder. Welcome, Lindsay, to the Christy Adams Show.
Thank you. It's really great being here. I appreciate you having me on.
Well, it's an honor for me to have you on because your story is so inspiring. I've talked about it with you over and over multiple times. I never get tired of hearing it because it is such a just a great story for people to hear. And before we go any further, I want to say what it is. Today you're here to talk about substance use disorder.
Yes, I'm really excited to be able to talk about that. It's something I'm really passionate about.
Okay, so as I was preparing for our interview, I came across some statistics that shocked me. So I want to go ahead and share those up front before we go on with the show. So these are from the NCDAS website. That's the National Center for Drug Abuse Statistics. So 50% of people 12 and older have used illicit substances at least once in their lifetime. That was shocking to me. That is just a statistic that is so shocking to me. There have been over 700,000 drug overdose deaths in the U.S. since the year 2000, which is completely and utterly shocking and just heartbreaking to me. And the federal budget for drug control in 2020 was $35 billion. That's billion with a B. And we still have an epidemic on our hands. So, as I said, those numbers are so staggering to me. Are they shocking to you as well?
You know, actually, they're not as shocking to me as you would think. I've been dealing with this for a long time, and I've seen so many people struggling with this, and it touches everybody. So it is shocking, but I've just seen so much of it that I know how bad it is and how far it reaches.
Yeah, I think when you experience it firsthand, then it's probably not as shocking as it is to somebody like me who hasn't really experienced it firsthand. I've known people who have dealt with substance use disorder and abused substances, but I've never actually had that happen myself. I'm one of the fortunate ones. So I guess that's why it was so, just like I said, staggering. So I met you about 6 months ago and instantly connected with you. I felt like we instantly connected.
Yeah.
You are so inspiring to me. Your story is one that I think about often, especially on days when I'm having a hard day. And when things are getting me down and I think, man, I can't do this. And then I'm like, wait, think about Lindsay and what you've gone through. Like I said, I've never endured the bonds of substance abuse. But tell our viewers your story. I'm not going to lay it out for you. I want you to lay it out. Tell me from beginning to end.
Okay. Well, when it first started for me, I basically had some issues with depression, but I didn't know it was depression at the time. And so I just thought I was lazy, and I wasn't able to get laundry done or clean or do dishes, and I felt like I wasn't a productive member of society. And so I remember one time I got a prescription for having my wisdom teeth removed, and it was just pain medicine. And when I took it, it made me feel euphoric in a sense that I was able to get my chores done at the house, and I was able to clean, and I felt like what I felt like normal people would feel like. And that was, it started my self-medicating essentially, and it just led to at first it was just when I needed it to get things done, and then eventually it became I needed it every day to get things done. There was always something that needed to get done, and I didn't realize I was self-medicating for depression until way later in my life.
Yeah, it's sad how it can sneak up on you like that, and before you know it, you're in that trap. So I was wanting to ask you about some of the low points of your addiction. So of course you said depression, and I've heard people talking in my line of work and in your line of work, because you are a substance abuse counselor. We'll get to that in a few minutes.
Yes.
Lindsay has a really inspiring story. I can't wait for you guys to hear it. But So we both know that it's a cycle, and we know that there's a discussion that goes on. Does depression and anxiety or any kind of mental health disorder cause substance abuse, or is it vice versa? Does substance abuse cause people to become depressed? And I feel like it can be either one.
Yeah.
So what do you think about that?
I mean, I definitely think that it could go either way. In my case, I do think that that was an underlying issue for me, and I was self-medicating. Um, but there was definitely a lot more going on for me, and it just progressed to a point where, like I said, I was using every single day, and everything that I said that I would never do, I ended up doing. And you asked me about what some of the low points were for me, and the lowest point for me probably was I went to pick up my kids from daycare, and the police were there waiting for me. And they served me with an order of protection, and I wasn't able to pick up my kids, and they told me I couldn't see them again until I passed a drug test. And that was definitely the lowest point for me, because as a mom, to be told that you can't see your kids is the most heartbreaking thing that you can ever imagine. And there were a lot of other low points in my addiction, including going to jail, experiencing homelessness, sharing used needles, all kinds of low points. But those were some of the few that stick out to me.
So what was the time frame when you first started self-medicating to the point where the police were waiting with an order of protection so that you couldn't see your children? What was that time frame? How long did that take?
Well, it goes so quickly, and the thing is, it doesn't feel like a very significant amount of time, but um, it just it and it's not. It moves very, very quickly. It progresses very fast, and that's exactly what happened with me. Um, I don't remember the exact time frame, but I mean, it was less than a couple of years. Um, it was very fast.
Well, you know what? That's a lot longer than I would have thought. Like I would have thought you were going to say like 3 or 4 months. So a couple of years, you really struggled in that 2 year period
Yeah.
with the self medicating.
Mm-hmm.
I think that happens more than we know.
Mm-hmm.
And, I do understand that we have to have medication for things like your wisdom teeth or things like back surgery or whatever. But I think that, and I certainly don't want to go into this big debate that we can have, but we both know that medicine is overly prescribed,
Mm-hmm.
like too much, and it's not regulated as much as it should be. And to me, that's really sad. So,
Yeah.
so you started self medicating. It took you like 2 years. You were served with papers. You couldn't see your kids. Really want you to go in too much personal detail if you don't feel comfortable. If you want to share, you can. You're certainly welcome to
Mm-hmm.
share. But tell me about when that happened. What did you feel like? If you don't mind to take me there that day, what did that feel like? I know you said it was like heartbreaking, and I certainly can't imagine, uh, how that felt. What were some of the emotions that you were feeling that day?
That was a really tough moment for me. It was shocking because I wasn't expecting it. It was completely out of the blue for me. They had kind of done it without giving me any kind of idea that that was going to happen. And so when it did, my heart sank. It's hard to talk about without getting emotional.
Yeah, you don't have to talk about it. We can stop there if you want to. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Even though I've come so far and life is just fantastic now, going there is hard.
We don't have to. We can stop right there. So I appreciate your willingness to share, but I don't want you to go too far because I certainly don't want to cause you any pain. Because, like I said, we're here for you to share your story, and Lindsay's story is really beautiful. It is a story of loss and recovery, one of the most inspiring I've ever heard. So tell us, so let's switch to something more positive. We'll get there. Tell me about your attempts at sobriety and getting clean. So I've seen people that struggle firsthand, and in my line of work and your line of work, we see that, and we see people, they want to do it, but it's so hard. And I even told somebody today, I said, in my opinion, getting free from addiction is the hardest thing a human can ever do.
Yeah, it really is. Well, after that happened, I had a really, really strong resolve to get clean, because now I had a reason that was stronger than anything else, because I wanted to see my kids. And I had actually tried to get clean before that. That wasn't like the first catalyst for me trying to get clean. But before that, I had tried to get clean to keep my marriage intact, and it didn't work out. I had gone to a long-term recovery place, stayed for about 90 days, and when I got out, things weren't what I expected them to be. So I hadn't changed. I came back the same person. I didn't do any kind of work on myself. And so, and I also still was dealing with the depression, and still at this point didn't know that that's what was going on. So I'm still struggling with a lot of things, and just went right back to it. Then once I had had my kids taken away, I had an even stronger resolve. And so every time that I would end up in jail for something, I would tell myself, I'm not going to use when I get out. And it would take going to jail to stop, because these drugs are strong, and the withdrawals on them are just horrendous, and they're impossible to go through without some sort of separation from them. And so the jail time would tell me, or give me that separation from it long enough that I would get, okay, I can do this now, and I believed I could do it, and I would get out, and I would make it like a week, or one time I even made it almost 45 days, I believe, and I still just, every single time I would use again, and I was so confused, and I didn't understand like why I kept using every single time. It didn't make sense. But up until that point, I didn't have any kind of program that I was using to get clean, and I wasn't doing any kind of real work on myself. I was just trying to do it myself.
So we both know the importance of digging to that root cause. There's always a reason. I told somebody a couple weeks ago, I said, nobody wakes up and says, hey, I'm going to go out and do drugs today and ruin my life. There's always an underlying issue, whether it's trauma, whether it's some kind of emotional pain, whether it's depression in your case. There's always a reason that we turn to anything. And it's not just drugs, Lindsay. People turn to things, but I find it heartbreaking that people look at people who are addicted to substances and judge them so harshly when they themselves might be addicted to overeating or gambling or sex or anything that they're using to mask the pain that they have.
Right.
Because it's easy for people to put you down. Oh, there's an addict or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
We've heard all of it. When they could be doing something too. They could be addicted to pornography behind the scenes, and hiding that.
Right.
And it's really sad. So really the key to getting clean or being free from that is to figure out what's causing it. What is at the root of it? What is there? Once you heal that, I remember, I don't mean to change the subject, but I remember one time I went out in my yard to pull weeds. And I had weeds growing all along the sidewalk. Well, of course, I just started, picking them. And I thought, if I don't get to that root, they're just going to come right back up next week. And so I had to take time, and I had to dig down and pull those roots up. And they never came back. Not those. So we have to get to the root, and we have to pull that thing up by the root, figure out what it is, and then abolish that, and then all the other things will be easier to take care of. You know, so yeah,
Exactly.
So after you, so you said you kept trying and trying, but you weren't working on yourself. What caused you to finally realize, hey, I've got to treat the depression before I can be free of what's causing me to try to be more euphoric and not feel the depression?
Well, that actually came later in my recovery. What came first was me realizing that I had to completely surrender. So up until that point, I had been trying to do everything my way. So every time I would get out of jail or I would try to get clean on my own, I would just try to power through, right? And just do whatever I thought was best. But the last time and the final time and the time that ended up working, I remember I was sitting in jail and I was facing prison time for some charges, and the idea of going to prison was almost welcoming at that point, because I was thinking to myself that it might be my only way of being able to get off drugs. And I, at that point, became willing. I became willing to go to prison if that's what it meant for me to be able to get off of the substances. And I dropped to my knees and I prayed to my higher power and I completely surrendered that if that's what it took for me to get my kids back, I would do it. I did not end up going to prison. I actually, when I went back to court, they ended up letting me out on probation, and I was absolutely terrified because every time I've gotten out on probation or on bond, I mess it up. And so I was scared to death. But the difference this time is I had completely surrendered. I wasn't trying to do it my way anymore. And from that point forward, everything that I needed was put right in front of me. And it wasn't anything that I did. It was everything that I let go of. So when I got out, I had nothing. I had nothing and I had no one. I had a cell phone that had no minutes on it and the clothes on my back, and that was it. And that's how I started. And I ended up having to spend the night that night when I got out, after they dropped me off downtown, at a house with people who were using, because that was my only option. Those were the only people who would talk to me at that point. But you know, people who use are good people. And they cared about me and they didn't want to see me fail. And so, you know, they locked themselves in their bedroom and they tried to hide it from me. And somehow I made it through the night. And the next day I got into an IOP program and things just started falling into place. And every suggestion that was made to me, I did. And one of the suggestions that was made to me was to get a sponsor and to work the steps of the 12-step program. And so I did. And that was the first time that I had ever tried to do that. And from that point forward, my life started to change. Later on, I did realize that I had mental health issues and I needed to address those. And that's where it came in about the depression. I finally discovered that there was underlying issues that I needed to address as well. But working the steps is what completely transformed my life and changed who I am as a person.
Good. So we both know that the higher power and faith plays a huge part. And, you know, we both talk to people every day and tell them, you know, the God I believe in might not be the God you believe in, but we have to believe in a higher power, something outside of ourselves. Because what that does is, and I tell people this every day, if you can have a place to put your cares, whether it's on God, and I tell them, I'm like, listen, y'all, if you go out and talk to a tree or a cloud, just to unload that from
Right.
yourself, know that you don't have to carry it anymore, then that helps a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, I would love to have people believe in the God I believe in, but if whether they do or not, if they can just find a higher power and unload the junk out of them onto whatever, and you can
Mm-hmm.
talk to a wall if you want to, but just get it out of you and know that you don't have to carry it because there's somebody outside of yourself that will carry it
Yeah.
for you. So I'm really glad that you had that, and the part of the 12 steps in the big book, they do talk about faith, and research has shown that people who have some type of spirituality and some type of faith, they're more successful in anything, in recovering from depression, anxiety, or substance use. So I'm glad that your kids were a motivating factor for you, or the main motivating factor for you. I tell people all the time, you got to do it for yourself, and that's true. But when you've got something outside of you, like your children or a spouse or your parents or whatever, that you can look at and you can say, because those eventually become your support. They're
Yeah.
the reason you want to do it, and they become your support.
Yeah.
So I'm really glad that you had that. So what qualities would you say that it takes to recover? What does somebody have to recover?
Well, I think that the most important things are that you have to be able to be honest with yourself and with others. You have to be completely open-minded, and you have to be willing. Those are the three things that I think are required to be able to be successful in recovery.
I agree. I certainly agree with that. And so now I want you to tell the viewers the good part. Let's go to the positive part, the part that I love. Like I said earlier, it's yours is a story of loss and recovery. You lost it all. You had the clothes on your back and a cell phone with no minutes. And then you had friends who were still using, and you had to put yourself right in that place. And we don't recommend that, but sometimes you have to do what you have to do. And I'm glad that those people were aware enough and were rooting for you
Yeah.
enough, even though they weren't rooting for themselves. They were rooting for you enough to where they put themselves in their bedrooms, and they wanted you to succeed. So
Yeah.
so you've turned your life around. Everything is great now. And I'm smiling, you're smiling. So let's go through that. Let's delve into how that all happened.
Okay. So, like I said, I had absolutely nothing. So I started off by living at a sober living facility or halfway house, however you want to call it. And they actually took me in with nothing. And I started there, and I didn't have any clothes. So I actually started with a wardrobe by going through some donated clothes. And that's how I started with my wardrobe. Um, and I lived there for about 8 months. Um, I After I had a little bit of time, not it didn't take much, but a little bit of time, my mom started trusting me, and so I started rebuilding that relationship with her. Um, my dad had passed away, unfortunately, about a year before I got clean. So she did let me use his car after a little bit of time had passed, and I started proving myself to her, which was really helpful and made a huge difference. Um, but I had to really like show her that I was, um, moving forward in the right direction. But I think like the key thing to realize there is that those things got put in my position in place for me by my higher power because I was doing the next right thing. And then I just continued until I finally lived with my mom for a little while. She let me come back and stay with her. I couldn't do that for very long. I love my mom to death, but we couldn't, I'm an adult. That didn't last very long. And then I was finally able to get a very small 1-bedroom apartment, which I loved. I was working in recovery, and I got this job and started working toward getting my license to be a substance abuse counselor. And and so while I'm working toward that, and I have this little 1 bedroom apartment, and this one, it was a big 1 bedroom apartment, but I finally got custody of my kids back, and we lived in that 1 bedroom apartment, me and my kids, my 2 little girls. I let them have the bedroom, and I slept in the living room, and we did that for 3 years. Um, and and you know what? It was worth every minute of it, and we shared that small little space. Um, but it's been worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Lindsay, a lot of times we don't realize how great and wonderful the little things are like that. Like, just when you worked, you've shared with me you worked for about 2 years to get your kids back after
Yes.
you got clean. It was like a 2 year process. So
Yep.
to be with them, I'm sure you would have lived in like a studio apartment, anything just to be with your children.
Yes.
So yeah, so you got that. You got your license. You got your kids back. You got a house. You got a car. I also wanted to say, I want to go back to this. You said it took a while for your mom to trust you. Now, we tell people all the time that I tell clients that when they go out, I say, don't go back to your hometown and try to go tell every person, I've changed.
Mm-hmm.
They're not going to believe your words because actions speak louder than words, and we know that.
Mm-hmm.
If you just live a life where they can see it,
Yeah.
then they will eventually come around and they'll be like, hey, they have changed and they are different.
Yeah.
And so they'll see it for themselves. And so it sounds like that your mom was, listen, our parents, they love us. They want us to succeed.
Mm-hmm.
She wanted to support you. And she did, and she took a chance. And now I bet she is just so happy with you and the progress that you've made.
Yeah.
So we worked up to that. You got your license and all that. You got a really great job as a substance abuse counselor. And what's the big thing that recently happened to you that is so wonderful?
So I was able to get into a really healthy relationship, probably the first healthy relationship that I've ever had in my entire life. And we just recently got married, and we also bought a house together.
And you just got a car, like a new car.
We did. We got a really nice brand new car.
And
Yes.
What makes me happy too, I remember one day you told me, you said, I bought a riding lawnmower.
Yes.
It's the little things like that are so important, Lindsay.
Yeah.
After you've lost everything. I mean, so many people go to Lowe's or Home Depot and just pick up a riding lawnmower and not think twice about it.
Mm-hmm.
But you are so appreciative of every single thing in your life.
Yes.
And that's so beautiful.
Yeah. To see my kids' reaction to getting their own bedrooms, priceless.
Yeah.
After 3 years of sharing their bedroom and not having privacy because I'm in the living room sleeping, it was priceless, like absolutely priceless, and the best feeling in the world to be able to give that to them.
Lindsay, you're passing something on. Like, yeah, it's great to give them their own bedroom. I'm sure they love that, and you love doing that. But you're passing on a strength to them that they might not have had they not had to see this. Unfortunately, we never want our kids to see us go through hard times, but your children will grow up and say, man, my mom did it. My mom did the hardest thing that you ever have to do. My mom did it. So your little girls are watching you live in recovery every day,
Yeah.
and they know that's possible. And so many times, sometimes I get disheartened in my job, and I'm like, does it really work? Is what I'm doing working? Or are they listening or whatever? And it can work. You're living proof that it works. It is possible. And
Yeah.
I tell these people, I'm like, listen, y'all, it's possible. I know somebody who's done it.
Right.
Is it easy? No, this is the hardest thing ever. But it's definitely possible. So when you were in your active addiction, at your lowest point, out on the street doing whatever you were doing,
Mm-hmm.
were you able to picture your life like it is today?
Even before my active addiction, I really wasn't able to picture this kind of life for myself. So definitely not in my active addiction. I just didn't have very high hopes for myself. And I don't really know why that is, but I just didn't. And now I'm the most determined person that you will ever meet. I have so many goals and dreams and aspirations, and I'm going to reach them.
Yes, you are. Yes, you are.
I know I will.
Yes, you are.
And I just keep moving forward. And I'm also very open-minded to the fact that if it doesn't go the way that I expect it to go, that's okay too. Because like I'm living in my higher power's will now.
Mm-hmm.
So as long as it's moving up, I'm okay. Doesn't matter what it looks like.
Yeah, you will, Lindsay, because anybody who has the determination to overcome addiction can do anything. The sky's the limit for you. There's nothing you can't do. And I know those sound like platitudes or cliches or whatever, but it's really the truth. I mean,
Yeah.
the strength that you had to climb out of a pit shows me that you can do anything. I mean, anything. So,
Well, it's really, for me, less about strength and more about complete surrender. For me, that's why I feel that I've been as successful as I've been, is because at every step of the way, I surrender. And every time I surrender, I'm blessed.
so like the Bible says, cast all your cares on God because He cares about us, and that's basically what you're doing. And
Yeah.
it's so like it's very important to know that you can't do it on your own.
Yeah.
That you know what, Lindsay, that is where we all need to be. I mean, I can't do my life on my own, and I know that. And every day, I ask the Lord every morning on the way to my job. I'm like, Lord, help me because I can't do this without you.
Right.
So what advice or words of wisdom would you have for somebody who might be watching the episode right now who is struggling like you were, or maybe not even there yet, but maybe on the verge, or somebody who's just full on in it who might happen to turn on this show? What words of advice would you have for them on how to get out of it?
I would say try to let go of control, because trying to control everything or do everything your way is never going to work. I tried it. I tried to do it all my way, and it never gets me out. It always gets me further into more pain and heartache. But as soon as I let go and stopped trying to control the way that things went and took the suggestions of the people that knew what to do, everything went the way that it was supposed to go.
Before I end, I do want you to tell the audience how very important it is to have a sponsor or go to meetings or whatever, because no man is an island. We cannot do anything alone. And I know you have your higher power, but how important is it to involve somebody on, like who's around you?
Yeah. Well, I absolutely couldn't have done it without a sponsor, because I wouldn't have known what to do. The sponsor is such a critical component because they take you through the steps, and without them, there's no guidance on how to go through those steps. I can stumble through them and try to figure it out on my own, but I don't have a clue how to do it. And that's the sponsor's job. The sponsor's job is to help me figure out how to get through those steps. And they've been through it, so they know what it's supposed to look like.
Yeah, I agree. So, Lindsay, as I say to you on like a weekly basis, you are an amazing woman who, I'm going to try not to cry now. You're an amazing woman whose story has inspired me, because you've proven against all odds that you can do something that is almost unachievable. And it is unachievable for a lot of people. They just don't have that determination and the grit or the fortitude or whatever you want to call it, or maybe the wisdom to go and surrender like you did. And your story is just beautiful. It is beautiful. And I know that it has touched me, and I know that it'll touch everyone who watches this show. And I just want to thank you so much for coming today and sharing your story and opening up. And I certainly didn't mean to push you to a point of tears or whatever. But I feel like that you and your story are going to make a huge difference in the world. And I just want to thank you for coming.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. And I hope that my story does make a big difference. I want to be able to help people. I'm passionate about it now, being able to help people, because I've come out of like a dark place. And so to be able to help other people do that is so important to me. So I appreciate you saying that.
If you are suffering with substance use disorder, help is available by calling the number on your screen, 1-800-662-HELP. That's 1-800-662-4357. It's free and they are open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. As you can see, recovery is possible if you want it badly enough. Lindsay and her story are living proof.